process we're looking at today is providing telemedicine follow-up services for Northern surgical patients as it relates to Manioan Health Center patients. The process review session was performed on November 24th, 2011, involving stakeholders from all parts of the process. The first thing we always start with in any of these processes is trying to figure out what is truly value to the client. Please help me fully understand my health and health problems so that I can make informed choices about surgery. I would like timely care when it is necessary in the most suitable location. I want to be clear about what will happen next so I can prepare properly for my surgery. Help support my recovery at home. This is a statement that we use to ground all of the decisions. When the decisions or the conversation goes off course to something that might be overly political or not related to the client, this helps us ground us in what we want to deliver. Interestingly enough, right now, the process does not deliver on this value statement. So here's the process map for provide telemedicine to Northern surgical patients. It goes all the way across this wall. It's about a closer to a 20-step process to go from start to end. It begins right here with this first step, which is setting up the clinics. Setting up the clinics for telemedicine. The way it works is there's a clinic offered a couple times a month when patients can call in from the northern communities, and the physician here at the hospital provides those visits. So there's a clerk here who takes a look at the schedule, the availability of the surgeon, and says we're going to do our clinics on, let's say, the second and the fourth Thursday of each month. And she does that in conjunction with another clerk who works in the surgery clinic, in the pre-op clinic. And they work out between each other what times those are available to prepare. They do this once or twice a month, and they might have availability for clinics provided a couple months out into the future. So that's the first thing that has to be set up, is what days are we going to provide these telemedicine visits? Once that's set up, the real big start of the process is identifying a need for a telemedicine surgery follow-up. What happens is at the end of a surgery, on the patient's discharge sheet is written, this is the discharge sheet, they write requires telemedicine follow-up. And then that piece of documentation gets filed. And the client leaves the hospital not knowing when that telemedicine visit is going to be, but it's recorded on the sheet. And then that sheet goes in with a referral package, and then the surgery clinic sort of manages that paper. And all the way through this process, they're recording all kinds of documentation and forms, which we won't get into too much detail. But the next step in the process is the telemedicine coordinator. Once she has all of these sheets, she'll have a batch of them, of maybe a dozen requests for telemedicine. She'll go in there and book all the appointments. So she'll compare the request for telemedicine with what days those clinics are, and say, okay, here's when we're going to slot all the patients in. And they're going to try and group them by community. So we might do 5 patients from one community for half an hour, and then for the following half hour, provide the telemedicine visits for the next community, and then do that for a handful of communities over the course of the morning. But they're broken off into half-hour chunks by community. Once she's finished all of that and set up the schedule, and she records it in an Excel spreadsheet and in a printout and a bunch of other documentation, she faxes that documentation off to KOTM, which is an organization that manages scheduling of telemedicine clinics for the northern patients in general, for more than just surgery. From there, KOTM has a checklist. They check off some information on the sheet. They create the sheet and say, this is the portion of the process that the request is in, and we're starting the process. And once she has that information, she also puts that information into a calendar that KOTM has online, which, by the way, is the 5th calendar that we've seen so far at this process. And then she sends that information. She then emails some information off to the northern community, the nursing station, saying we have an appointment booked for such and such a time. But in the northern community, they have to make a phone call back to KOTM to get the patient health information, because they're not allowed to email the information to the northern community. Once they've had that conversation, the travel person in the northern community needs to find the patient and confirm that the time is okay. And presuming that time is okay, they then call back to KOTM, the scheduling office, which is down here, and they send a confirmation that the appointment is ready to go. Then KOTM then informs Sue Lookout office that appointment is confirmed. So we've got a whole passive process from the hospital to KOTM to the travel clerk to the patient, back to the travel clerk, back to KOTM, and back to Sue Lookout just to book the appointment. So then the day for the appointment actually comes up. In the morning of the day before the appointment, the coordinator here at the hospital has to order information from health records, and they get the whole package ready for the next day for the clinic. And then they prepare it, and the telemedicine visit actually happens, and the physician is in the office there ready to do all the visits. Meanwhile, in the northern community, prep in the clinic in the northern community, there's a coordinator there who sets up all the equipment, they prepare some documentation, they inform the patient of what they're about to see throughout the day. Then the visit actually happens. So here's where one of the biggest problems is if there's actually a connection made, which may not happen because sometimes the coordinator is not present at the visit. If the coordinator is present at the visit, then if the patient is present at the visit, which they might not be later, they may not have shown up for any number of reasons. If they're on time, then they can do the visits. The failure rate here is really high. It's less than half of the visits are actually connect here successfully. So there's a great challenge at this point. Sometimes they'll call back if they're late, if they know they're going to come late, and the physician, if nobody shows up for that half-hour block, which happens quite frequently, and the physician is just waiting there for half an hour for the next half-hour block to start so we can call into the next community. And there might be nobody at the next visit, might have to wait another half hour, so you might be wasting a lot of the physician's time. And the physician closes out the session, just closes out some documentation, and up in the northern area here, in the nursing station, they close out the clinic session, they do some more documentation, closing out the patient file, and they send the documentation off to KOTM, who then takes that paper documentation, collects some statistics from it, and uses that for their reporting purposes. So, in a nutshell, that is what the provide telemedicine visits to the northern community process looks like. There are three main issues in the telemedicine process that need to be dealt with. The first is the patient doesn't know what the next step in the process is. Early on in the process here, the need is identified. Right after they're done their surgery, the need for follow-up is identified. But they don't know what time that follow-up visit is going to be and how to do the telemedicine visit. So it goes through a number of players here. It goes through booking clerks, and it goes through KOTM, and then to the community, to the nursing station. And the patient finally finds out here, once it's gone through a number of people and a number of schedules, when their appointment is going to be. It could have been a month or two between here and there. And that whole process of arranging that visit causes a tremendous amount of waste in the process. Furthermore, when the client finds out what time the appointment is, they're just told what time the appointment is. If they have to cancel the procedure, they have to begin the process all the way from the beginning again in terms of figuring out what time the clinic is and when they can come. So basically put another delay of an entire month onto the process. The schedule is held in too many places. There are about 10 scheduling databases in the process. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 scheduling databases in the entire process. In a number of forms, could be websites, could be emails, could be Excel spreadsheets. But if you have to change that information in one place, it would have to be modified all the way across the process, which is nearly impossible, which makes it really difficult to reschedule an appointment or even set an appointment in the first place. It really takes any flexibility that you might have out of the system completely because it's too difficult to keep everything up to date. The third issue with the process is that the coordinator in the community who actually communicates the appointment time with the patient is incredibly key and important to this process. They're fundamental to making the whole process work. However, there's a number of them scattered across 28 communities, and their processes that are used in this to communicate with the client are not well defined, they're not clear, they're not performed consistently, and they're not well managed across the process. By applying quality improvement methodologies to this process, we came up with 10 advanced change ideas that could be applied to dramatically transform this process and greatly improve it. You can find details about what those change ideas are in the associated slide deck that accompanies this video.